So first, a little about me. I'm a FHIR consultant at FHIR, where I help our customers bring their FHIR project to life. And as such, I have also worked for NICTIS for quite a while, where I've been involved in developing the NL core profiles. And as such, I can now say something about it. So for this presentation, I really want to take you along with how we have set up the Dutch core profiles, what is important to them, and also a little bit, some perks of the project, how we're doing things. And then slide into how we see the European health data space and what we are doing now and what we would like to do in the future. Like I said before, maybe first it's good to introduce NICTIS, which is a national institute in the Netherlands that is really about healthcare IT, and is all about interoperability standards. And then they do a lot of things, but among them, they are the ones that develop and govern the healthcare information models or logical models. In the Netherlands, we call them ZIPs, and probably from now on, I will just name them ZIPs because that's easier. And then they also develop the national FHIR profiles, and they have all kinds of interoperability standards that they also govern. So I already said those healthcare models are really an important part of the profiles. That's where they're based on, and they are like logical models. They're made by the healthcare field in working groups, and they have made for 123 concepts in healthcare, like a blood pressure or like some kind of assessment scale. Made agreements on what the information belongs to that concept and really depicted like which kinds of elements belong to it. And then those healthcare information models or ZIPs are actually being applied in those interoperability standards. So within NICTIS already more than 30 different data sets or use cases uses those building blocks to define the information layer. So if we zoom in a little bit on what's inside ZIP, it really looks almost similar to like a FHIR resource page. Every ZIP has a page on a wiki that has a description on what the ZIP is all about, why it's important, maybe some instructions. And then at the heart of it, you have a UML really detailing every element, the data type, the cardinality, and if which terminology to use. And of course, also in the table with all the extra text. And they form the basis for our national core profile. So here we have a timeline from 2015 to, now. And at the bottom, you see all the FHIR versions that may be familiar with you. And so far, we have 4 releases of the ZIPs, one in 2015, the next 2017, 2020, and 2024. And in that time, it was, FHIR was not really a thing, and the development of those healthcare information models started at the same time. But once they were there, besides having CDA in the Netherlands, we also wanted to exchange the data that was described by the healthcare information models in FHIR. So we started making profiles to explain to the people or to the implementers how a ZIP, how the information of a ZIP lands into FHIR. So we started in DS2.2. Then, after every ZIP release, we took the then leading FHIR version, except at the end, because then we stick to R4, because it was like the most prevalent case at that moment. And then also here, the latest things, we also did a little bit differently because we started profiling before the ZIP release was there, also with an idea to make quality adjustments towards the ZIP model itself, because you're already implementing the model and you get feedback. So here we see what's now prevalent in the Netherlands. Probably it's not really readable, but the slides are also on Wova. So the DS2.2 one was really to get ourselves familiar with profiling, and it didn't really live that long. Nobody's using it, but the STO3 one, we needed to publish them quite quickly and fast, and they have been picked up and put into production. And we even have 2 major versions that are in use. And that one, I think, is maybe the most prevalent in the Netherlands. Then we also have the R4 profiles. They're not really ready yet, also still in development, and not all are validated by HL7. But they are also being used and implemented. And the last one that's still in development. So if we zoom in a little bit of how the profiles look like, we have, again, the zips that are made by the field. They are the basis for the zips, for the zip profiles or the NL core profiles. And we, from 2020 on, we have split the profiles. So we have one profile, which is an abstract profile that is really the zip. It contains the mapping to the zip and all the constraints from the zip, but only that. And on top of that, we have an NL core profile that can have extensions that are used by interoperability standards that are being applicable for multiple interoperability standards. So they can be promoted to the NL core layer, but they don't necessarily are defined by the zip. And another thing here interesting to know is that we don't have an implementation guide just for the NL core profiles. They're just published on Simplifier in an NPM package as well. But there's no implementation guide because that is on the interoperability standards side. They choose which profiles to use and they make a wiki and they have the implementation guide on how to actually apply the NL core profiles. So here I want to mention like 2 perks of the profile, which I think is very nice. So during the profile development, we actually implement the spec in some kind of way because we load the zips into our Decor, which is a data modeling tool. They make a form out of the zip, and then we type in the example data, which is in the backend of our Decor. It's an XML proprietary format of our Decor, and then we make XLT mappings to make FHIR instances, and that's nice because interoperability standards can use XLT mappings, and it's also a very nice quality assurance thing because you're looking at your own profile if you make those mappings. What's also the second nice perk that I want to mention is that at the specification repos, we have a quite extensive quality assurance process going on. So Nicholas has made a tooling repo containing the Java validator inside the Docker and a user interface, and then the GitHub repositories with the actual FHIR profiles, they have some configurations and use that tool. And what Nicholas also has is, the way written down how they make profiles in profiling guidelines. And those are also being profiled in other profiles, and we use those profiles to validate the profiles. So I think it's a nice method, and you can look up if you have the links. So some challenges that we encounter with making the profiles is that the zips, they already started before FHIR, and they were really developed with the Dutch healthcare in mind, and also with the Dutch healthcare. So that makes it very hard to make map it to an international standard. So a lot of things doesn't fit really well. And an example here is that zips are most times very abstract, while FHIR is more concrete. So for a vaccination in the zip, it can be a vaccination that has been performed, or is ordered, or is a clinical reminder. It's all in one model, but in FHIR that ends up in 3 different resources. And then it's very hard to know within the zip if every concept is relevant in every profile. So that are some of the hard mapping things. And then we have another challenge, and that is the European Health Data Space and Exchange format. Because, we really want to conform to it because it's going to be an important part. It's going to be in law and whatnot. So you would want to derive from it maybe even. However, that's currently not really possible because it's still really in development. And what we also notice is that they have more of a use case mind when developing the profiles. Well, the zips are really, and then of course is really use case agnostic, so that also sometimes results in hard to make mappings. And also there are some granularity differences between the zip models and the logical models on the AU side. So for now, for this version we're now developing, we have chosen to not be incompatible. And that to make it compatible in the future, first the zips should align more. An example here is for the European patient summary. The condition is mandatory, and then we decide that for our NL core profile, we leave it at 0.1 or optional. And then an interoperability standard like the Dutch patient summary can make it mandatory. And then here, we're looking at all the use cases, but not only at European Health Data Space, also at other implementation guides internationally. I had some other profiling examples of how we then now do that pursue alignment. So for the medical device identifier, it's kind of the same as the condition I just talked about. Then here it's something that we deviate from the zip. So we have a product type, and the zip has a required binding on it, and it has some specific codes for saying no hearing aid is allowed, while we saw in the European patient summary and in the international patient summary, they have a no known devices code. And here we thought this is very nice, so we talked with the zip people, and then they said, okay, this is also nice. So we adapted and deviate from the zip and chose the EPS value sets. Another example is for alert. We saw that there was a priority extension, but we don't have any backing, functional backing from the zip, so we don't include it just off. And then lastly, a mapping example. So for a pharmaceutical product name, we mapped it to medication code.txt, but we saw in the medication, or in the European patient summary, that they use an extension. We went into talks with them to see what it should be, and they said, like, this is still in development, we don't know, both can be used. So here we decided to remain our mapping, and we tried to document this as such. So the last slide about the future and where we're heading to. So like I said, we really want to conform at some point, but we think it should start with the zips. So already some fit gap analysis are going on to make sure that we know where the difference is and act upon it. Also in the Netherlands, there's like a movement going on. It's called the zip transition, and they provided some national advice from the vendors on what the new zip should be, and they call it the zips 2.0, where they try, like, one of the main advices there is that the zips should already get international modeling into the process. And they're also looking more at open EHR concepts to incorporate that already in the zip versions. Then also something going on with more transaction building blocks. So it's taking a zip and also define some interactions with it, more like I think US Core also does, and that defines a couple of search parameters and queries that should be supported. And then we're also thinking about actually making an NL Core implementation guide, because we have quite some mappings that are pretty complicated, and you want to have some documentation on a page how multiple profiles work together. So this is it. I also think I'm almost out of time.
Yeah, almost. So. Any questions?
No.
Yep.
I think you noted earlier on one of the slides that a lot of the specifications were derived from STU3.
Yeah.
Does that mean a lot of the implementations are still on STU3?
Yeah, I think in the Netherlands that's the most prevalent standard that's in production, at least. Yeah.
Thank you.
And I think the most driver for that was that we have a national infrastructure made for exchanging information towards the patient. It's called MedMij. That was like the driver for making the FHIR profiles and putting that into use.
Any other?
Do you have the concept of like regional standards at all, or is it just national and nothing else?
I think the Netherlands is not so big, so I would say we mostly national, but yeah, they try to have all kinds of initiatives starting at the regional level now, but I think they will use mainly like national defined standards. But yeah, they do try to think or implement things at a regional level now. A lot of them. Martin.
So when comparing the Dutch profiles with the European ones, and you make a decision what to do and what to inherit and what not, how do you make this decision, and who is involved in that? Is there also implementers involved, or is it the NICTIS thing, or how does it work?
Yeah, so the first line during profile development is just the NICTIS team that makes it, but every profile before it is like officially published needs to go through HL7 Netherlands, so they will be the ones also checking or validating if the right choices have been made. Yeah.
Any other? Yeah.
I think Simone.
I assume that the creation of the zips started long before people had a concept of what FHIR resources are. I assume it might be pretty difficult at some times to map that to FHIR. So you either have to adapt your logical model or you have to bend the FHIR resource, the FHIR profile to make it match. How much FHIR knowledge do you put into the creation and development of the zips nowadays, knowing that you eventually will have to map it to a FHIR resource? Is that still separate, or are there actually FHIR experts at the table when the zips are created?
Yeah, so in the beginning, indeed, it was like not the case because they started out exactly at the same moment that FHIR was developed. And then also the zip releases are very slow, as you can see. Like there we only have 4 in the beginning. But here, actually, at the end, we try to do this by making the FHIR profile, the zip implementation before it was actually published. So we could get like feedback from the FHIR resource, like, hey, this does not map, and do something about it. But the problem is that it takes a lot of time to make the logical models because the whole agreement, like they need to get all the information with the care people. And a lot of our feedback didn't really get into this release. So it will be for the next zip release. But yeah, so maybe later on in this whole process, we were able to incorporate lots of knowledge from the FHIR world into the zips. And they're also now, the zips people also looking more at OpenEHR for modeling their concepts.
Do you foresee a time in the future where you will reverse engineer your logical models from the FHIR specifications?
That's a bit what if I look at the European logical models, I see a lot of FHIR there in a lot of cases, and that makes it easy. But I don't know. I don't necessarily think so because there we already have like quite a solid base that is implemented in the Netherlands. So yeah.
Another one? Okay, but is the NICTIS team also? Are clinicians involved in the whole process of modeling, or how does the feedback loop look like?
Yeah, so the actual profile development, there are no clinicians in it, but that's like the nice thing of the zips for us as a profiling team is we think that at least the whole healthcare process with the clinicians and the people that really know what's happening in the healthcare process, they made the logical model and all the terminology needed. So that's at the profiling team, you don't necessarily need those people
so
anymore.
They're involved at the start.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's the idea.
Why the idea?
No, that is because sometimes it's also pretty hard for me to know. I don't know exactly the process how those healthcare information, the zips, come together. I haven't been in like a working group there or something like that. So it's still for me. It's also a bit of a black box maybe how those things come together. But
okay. Any other question? We still have some minutes left.
Would you be able to show a logical model, the recent one, like a demo?
Like a zip? Or
yeah.
Yeah, of course. So it's on zips.nl. So if you get here, it's like an old-fashioned wiki. You have the option to look at them in the NL release or the English one. I will zoom in. So here we've got the main page with explanation of what those healthcare information models are. Here are all the releases. So if we look at the latest one, so here we have like all the different resources, also grouped per what they are. And do you have a preference for one? Yeah, that's
strong preference for allergy intolerance.
Yeah, or maybe if we wanted, the TNF tumor. This is also a very big one. So the TMM tumor classification, which is we try to do a lot with this with M-code, but it deviates from M-code in quite a bit well. But here is like a very big logical model with like the UML as the main part with all different kind of things in the terminology to it. And then a big table with all the different concepts and the data types on the left side.
Okay.
Does this?
Just one last question, and then it's time.
I was just wondering, how do you take care that everyone in the Netherlands implements the zips in the same way, and how is that tested basically from the vendor perspective as well?
Yeah, so how they implement it in the same way, that is done by the FHIR profiles, because the FHIR profiles contain a mapping for every zip concept. So well, all the zip concepts are explained how you put it into FHIR and also how to get it out of FHIR into the zip again. And then like which version to choose, that's always a very hard thing. But the Ministry of Health has, I think in 2022, said like for the Netherlands, the baseline is STU3 on zip 2017 and zip 2020 on R4. So there they already said like, for now, this is the baseline. And I think at some point the government will say, okay, now we're moving on to another or a higher version.
And is that like tested then? So are there like connectatons or something like that, where these implementations are evaluated?
Yeah, so that happens at the interoperability standards, so the actual use cases. So for example, for the MedMy project, for getting patients their data, and vendors also needed to implement the standards, then NICTIS has a whole test and validation centrum. They used previously Touchstone for it, but now have a Conformance Lab, where vendors can certify themselves and they'll test their tool and also see if everything meets the requirements.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Ardon, and thank you everyone for attending. You're all welcome for some food and drinks in the lounge.
Yeah, nice.